I'm Toni Janko with the Janko Realty Group. Thanks for joining us today. In our last video, we discussed credit scores. In this video, we're going to discuss all things related to income. We're going to dispose of common misconceptions. And we're going to do that by playing a game that we like to call Income Myth Busters. Joining me today, of course, is my partner Toni Eads and Brandy Jones with Union Home Mortgage.
Okay, Brandy, let's talk about myth number one. Does a person have to be at their job for a minimum of 2 years prior to starting the loan process?
No, that's not necessarily true. You could have changed jobs in the last 2 years. In fact, you could technically change jobs in the middle of the loan process. Now, we don't necessarily recommend that. It could delay the process, and of course, we'll need at least one pay stub from the new employer, and we prefer that that new employer and that new job is in the same industry.
So does that rule apply if they're self-employed as well?
That's a good point, Toni. So actually, if you're self-employed or 1099, you really need to have been at that job for the last 2 years, and we will average your last 2 years adjusted gross income from your tax returns. So keep that in mind, because a lot of people in those industries are going to write off their income too, and we really look at that adjusted gross income.
Busted! So myth number two, I've heard plenty of people say that you can't have job gaps when you're applying for a mortgage. Is that true?
That's not true at all. So in fact, you could have had a job gap of 6 months or less, and we're not even going to necessarily have any issues there. You could even technically have a little bit longer job gap. Depending on the circumstances, we may still be able to get you approved.
Busted! Myth number three, if you file bankruptcy, do you have to wait 7 years to qualify for a mortgage?
No, that's not true. So fortunately, if you file Chapter 7, you just have to wait 2 years for an FHA loan and 1 year if it's Chapter 13 with some different circumstances. Now, if you want to get a conventional loan, it will take a little bit longer.
Busted! Myth number four, getting a second job will help someone qualify for a higher mortgage.
So unfortunately, no, you can't just go out and get a second job and expect to be able to get a higher purchase price or qualify for a mortgage. You really have to wait 1 to 2 years after you started that second job before we can include that income.
Busted! Myth five, so is it true if someone has student loan debt that they would not qualify for a new mortgage?
No, that is not true. Not true at all. But keep in mind that if you do have student loan debt and you're not paying anything on it, whether it's in forbearance or maybe even less with income-based repayment plans, we do have to include something in there for your student loans.
Busted! Our final myth, myth number six. Is it true that cash can be used as income when qualifying for a loan? Examples being tips, construction workers, handyman, people that get paid cash.
Sure, so this isn't a clearly busted myth. It really depends on whether those cash incomes were being reported on the taxes. So if they were, then we can average it over the last 2 years, just like self-employed income.
That was a lot of myths. Busted!
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks, Toni. That was a lot of myths busted today. Make sure you stay tuned for our next video where we're going to talk about everything related to down payments. If you have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, give me a call, 317-414-9355. Thanks!
Busted!
Or we could do jazz hands. Busted!
No, I don't know. That's not